Hey, welcome to the Doc Analyzes Anything, the show where science and psychology meet. We analyze behavior, human behavior, including wearing a tuxedo with flip-flops. Discuss.
I'm not completely opposed depending on the situation, but I also come from like a very blue collar family. My dad would be like invited to different charity events as part of his work through United Way, and he'd wear the suit, but he'd always wear tennis shoes with it. He's like, I'm not going to just fully, involve myself into these practices. I have to show that I'm still one of the workers here. You know what I mean? And so I guess if you're doing it just because you don't care or because you're trying to make a statement, that's fine. If you think it looks good, then that's a no. That's a no for me.
I mean, I can't even imagine a situation in which I'd be wearing a tux these days. So I trying to pull something off like that's stylistically in your face is not going to go
Everything
well with the
everything I
tux with
do
me.
is stylistically in your face. So from our wedding, you do the tux rentals, and back in those days, the rental would have, you know, um, points or whatever for each rental, and we had a
Mhm.
pretty good wedding party on each side, and so uh Chad was one of them. These rentals, I got to use those points towards something later. And so I actually had a custom made like paisley dark red, almost purple, looks like a smoking jacket, but it's actually a tux made with those points. And so now I look for every opportunity I can to wear my custom tux to like a wedding or something, even though it is definitely not a traditional just trying to look nice tux. It is like in your face, look at this pattern, look at
It's a
me type
statement. It's a
situation.
statement piece. You know,
Absolutely,
There you go.
100%.
I
There you
think
go.
there's only one excuse if you're, and this is where you're just like you go all or nothing. Is if you put a tux on and then you've got Crocs that are also dressed up in a tux. I think that might be
Yeah, there you go. Man,
acceptable.
the kids in the Crocs though, man, I'm telling you, my sons are on multiple pairs at this point. They've gone through a few and they wear them out and they want another pair. The exact same one, exact same pair.
I have never put on a pair. I don't know that I ever will. Our
Same.
our kids have gotten them just from like gifts, and they seem to like them most for convenience than anything. But
Yeah,
I am
yeah.
just fine with having my old Air Force Ones that I've walked down and shoved my foot into the heel of so much that they're like the heels are just broken down, and now I'm wearing them like flip flops in the yard. Like that is just fine with me.
It's fair.
The only time I wear anything weird at all is when I try to get a little too adventurous with my dress shoes. Like I have some that are almost like a crushed velvet type of dress shoe to go with that tux, and I'm like, I don't know if I can really pull this off, but I'm trying to pull it off. So,
Yeah, 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 fair.
all right, I guess let's actually get down to the purpose of this all. Hello, everyone. I am Dr. Steven Sparks, your host, along with my always co-host Kyle Sturry, and our sometimes quite a bit of the time, who knows how often time, co-host Chad Hartung here. First, before we get in the topic, just mention that I, up too late on a whim, ordered and bought a whole bunch of swag, and now I have no idea how to get to anybody that actually listens to the show. And so I think Facebook, Instagram, I don't know, maybe Kyle will get on TikTok because I don't do TikTok usually, but we're gonna do some different ways to give it away. Like, all right, everybody send in your show ideas on some episodes we should do, and we'll choose the 5 we like the most and give out. We got some flasks, we've got some coffee mugs, some shirts, some hoodies, some hats, and let us know which one you prefer if you win, and we'll send you some free stuff because I bought it, so we might as well give it out to some people. So check out
I,
the
I like the rationale there.
yeah, check out the social media, and maybe we'll actually get on the social media a little bit more frequently too in general, but we'll have some opportunities here coming up for you to get some cool stuff. The new design that I came up with on the fly because like I said, I was up too late and just playing around with things. So look out for that. And then also always remember, either on social media or through the email, the doc analyzes anything at gmail.com. Send us your ideas, even if we're not giving you free stuff. But so today, last week was a little bit more theoretical, a little heavier. So today I thought, let's talk about another kind of fun story. Maybe the analysis won't be too heavy, but so be it. We did it once before with the chameleon. talking about the gentleman who just would take on new personas seemingly for the fun of it when he didn't necessarily even need to, but really probably for some sense of belonging, maybe love, affection, that sort of thing. Almost the exact same thing happened again, where I am going down the rabbit hole trying to find books. Still been listening to a lot of the audiobooks of some of the best, historical written fictional mystery. Uh, and I thought about, I don't know if anybody's ever seen the show. I think it's on Netflix. It's Lupin or Lupin. And it is a
No.
modernization of an old French uh, jewel thief book. And the gentleman is like the gentleman thief. He is the top of his game, breaking into museums, stealing things. And the new version is like someone that grew up reading these books and kind of recreating it. But at first he's doing it for a living, and then it ends up being more of a, okay, now I have to get myself out of situation after situation. I've enjoyed the show. Lupin, it's yeah, it's let me see where I have it. Arsene Lupin, and so it's ARSENE LUPIN are the original books. They're in French, but I'm trying to find the translation of them. And then I think it's just LUPIN maybe is the name of the show itself. So I'm looking for this book on my library app. I see one that pops up from the search that says Gentleman Thief. Download it, borrow it, just assume that I'm renting the book that I wanted to. Almost identical to what happened when I was looking for Sherlock Holmes type mysteries, and then downloaded one that just happened to mention Sherlock Holmes and found The Chameleon.
Oh, right.
So I start listening to this book and I'm like, this just doesn't sound like a story. It doesn't sound like fiction. It's weird that it's written this way. And it turns out I am listening to the true life account of a gentleman thief from the 1920s in the United States. And it was a book written or called A Gentleman and a Thief, not The Gentleman Thief like I thought it was. The Daring Jewel Heists of the Jazz Egg Rogue. It was written a few years ago by Dean, I think it's Job is how it's pronounced, even though it's written as Job. And it was actually a
Arrested
true life.
Development there.
Yeah. They specified like pronounced like robe, not like Rob, and so then I am assuming I don't know. Anyways, the book itself is written by a professor. I believe he's more of a historian, and so it's not quite as easy to follow as like a true story, but the story itself is probably more interesting than almost any fictional book could have been. And so I figured we'll tell this story. We'll talk about this gentleman thief and maybe analyze some of the behavior there, kind of like we did with the chameleon ahead of time. And then if people like this sort of thing, we can try to find more of these stories that I randomly find. Otherwise, we'll stop doing it if people tell us to stop doing it. So
We'll do whatever you guys tell us to do.
all right. So let's get down to it. We're talking about the gentleman's name is Arthur Berry. He was born the son of a working class Irish immigrant family in Massachusetts, and really doesn't talk much about his family life other than it wasn't they were not wealthy, but they were working class. It seems like they were surviving pretty well, but maybe or maybe not, like Chad and I fell into a rough crowd at a young age. And I can't really say that because we didn't fall into it. We were the rough crowd. I mean, there were no bad influences that caused us to do this. There was just our friend group that did bad things. In this case, he was actually hanging out with older kids. My analysis would be he seemingly was trying to impress them, like started drinking beer at the age of 7, started getting involved in some of their mischief and crime in the early teens, and then started actually doing some criminal activity for work and making money. And so by the age of 13, he was an errand boy for a person that made explosives for safecrackers.
Oh,
So there's a guy that is like in a home lab producing nitroglycerin for safe crackers to be able to rob a safe. And he was like sent on a train with a suitcase packed full of cotton and like these vials. And they're like, yeah, don't drop it, don't bump into things, don't try to blow up. And like he was taking it to them at different areas around. I'm guessing it's kind of like Massachusetts. There, he also spent some time in New York, and so was probably on like a kind of a local train route rather than going across the country. But 13, he was doing that for work, and then 15, he had his first home invasion robbery and stole some money from a house nearby from there, and kind of just became more and more involved in this life of crime, even at that young of an age.
I've always wondered about those explosives. I see them in movies. They're always like stuck to the safe, and then they like have little mini explosions, but there's like 10 of them in a row.
I think nitroglycerin,
Probably not
like
that sophisticated.
was just a big boom, but I don't know. I know like
Perfect.
now I think again from watching way too much Mythbusters, like I know that there are lots of different types of charges that do. Some are more concussive, some are more of a like a cutting type charge. You have some that
Hmm.
are much more like angular and can go in only one direction versus like just exploding outwards. There's a lot more technology now than I think there was back when they're just using a mass explosion, like I think is happening here.
Did you guys see the movie The Score back in the day? It was yeah.
I
So
did, but
they
I'm trying to remember who's in it.
That's the one with oh no. I'm thinking of the game. I was thinking of the one with
Was that Pacino or
the
someone that was
guy.
in?
yeah. So De Niro and Edward Norton.
Okay, yep, yep, yeah, I've
Marlon
seen that.
Brando's in it as well. He's like a backup part of it. But they use these explosions with safe cracking and it's a big boom.
Yeah,
Nice.
and
Yeah.
so that was early on. Later on, we'll find he's more like if you've seen. I've only seen the remake, but of oh now of course I lost it right then with Pierce Brosnan, where
Thomas
he's
Crown
like
Affair?
the Thomas Crown Affair, and
Great
so
movie.
Nice.
like yeah, just like super suave, getting in, getting out, taking the big stuff. Whereas like early on, nope, he's in here smash and grab sort of thing. So it is an interesting progression that we'll see. Um, but also, you know, giving our little bit of analysis here, it doesn't seem like he was trying to scrounge around to survive. Like his family wasn't destitute. It was, hey, he said he was a bigger kid, so he fit in with the older crowd. And it was like, hey, they're getting involved some stuff. I want to be cool. I'm going to do it too. And then kind of went from there. So,
Hmm.
uh, going by the dates of when he was born and when he was first incarcerated, he was 17 or 18. The year was 1914, and he was supposedly grabbed for a theft that he didn't commit. He says
Never do.
faced the opportunity of like the chance of going to prison, um, or he was able to join the army instead. And this would I think is entertaining just because the number of people I knew growing up that got in some trouble and would always like try to tell the judge, "Oh, I'm joining the military to not be in said trouble." And whether or not it ever actually worked, or whether or not, I mean, I'm sure some of them actually did to get out of bigger trouble, but that seemed to be everybody's. Well, that's how I'm going to get out of it. Like rationale back in the early to mid 2000s. Like I'll just tell them I'm joining the military. I'll be fine.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So he did join the military. Ended up as a medic during World War One, and they said it was kind of an interesting phenomenon because of when he went to the war and then came back. He was in like a later wave of people returning from war. And they said, first of all the jobs that had been vacated by the soldiers, many of them had been taken up by this point. So there was less opportunity. And all the fanfare and all of the respect and parades and that many of these first returning soldiers received, he didn't see or get any of it. It was kind of like an afterthought for these people that came home later. And so I'm sure there were plenty of opportunities to not get into it, like back into the life of crime. But when that's what you've known in the past, and when some of the better opportunities aren't there, like your fellow soldiers, he kind of went right back into that life when he returned. Moved to New York City, and um, I don't know, it kind of bounced around a little bit. He tried to, you know, do what he had done before, simple break-in, stealing from people, got arrested for larceny a few times. And as he was talking about it later, he thought, you know, came maybe not to a crossroads, but it came to the decision that he was not going to be someone that used violence to rob people. He said that the thought of violence repelled him, and he reasoned that stealing the expensive gems that he had eventually become famous for was more clean cut and sportsmanlike. It was almost gentlemanly to do. Um, it's close to a victimless crime as you could imagine, and this is again in his words. And he was once quoted as saying, "Rich people or people rich enough to own jewels never had to worry about their next meal, and always had the insurance payments that could help them out anyways." And so he didn't ever feel bad robbing from them versus a smash and grab at the local store or just pickpocketing people on the streets. And so
So he's
as he
specifically stealing from the wealthy in these
stealing from the
scenarios.
wealthy made him feel, at least to himself, like kind of like a Robin Hood type figure, even though he wasn't giving it to the poor,
Right.
and seemed more sportsmanlike, more I don't know, I guess he didn't feel like he should be looked down upon for what he was doing compared to somebody that would rob someone who was struggling to make ends meet, like his family probably was at times.
Yeah. That makes sense.
That's interesting. I wonder, because it's almost like a thief with a set of morals or a moral compass, but still like breaking the law. I wonder how much of that was instilled from his duty in the military, because there's a lot of structure and a lot of respect that's instilled in you. And his idea of never harming anybody, that violence was, there was no place for it. As a medic, he probably saw a ton of violence. And so that could have
Yeah.
disgusted him on the
Hmm.
whole idea.
And he was
Interesting.
actually
Yeah.
injured as well. I don't remember how badly, but he was injured in the war too. And so I bet as a medic seeing that and like, nope, I'm not going to be that person. He did have a gun. He did use that to scare people. But as we get into it later, like he wasn't brandishing it, waving around, trying to really scare them. He was trying to persuade them to hand over their material goods if he encountered somebody, or to just be able to escape. Um, we also have to remember that he is thought of as being maybe one of the best jewel thieves of all time, was famous in this day, was in the newspapers, had tons of notoriety, and was actually had some fanfare because people saw him doing this to the richest of the rich, and really some of this may have been mentioned later because he didn't actually have these thoughts early on as he got started, but as he became to think highly of himself and his craft, that he had these thoughts like, oh, well, I'm doing this fine because of who I'm doing it to. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
so we don't necessarily want to give him credit for like planning ahead. Well, I'm just going to do to the people that can afford it or deserve it. But it's always possible he had those thoughts too.
And
There's a
maybe not even
uh,
deserve. Maybe it's just like it doesn't impact them at the same level, therefore I can justify it.
right. There's a show on Apple TV with John Hamm. I forget what it's called, but he does that same thing. He like, runs into some moments where he's like low on cash, and he's a rich guy, and he steals from his rich friends, and they don't suspect him because they're friends. And he's like, they don't even realize that these $200,000 watches are even missing for weeks.
So before we like really get into the story, I was thinking about like, could I have ever done this? You know what I mean? I mentioned before, tiptoed along the lines of legality in my youth. But to me, breaking into somebody's home like this with the chance of them either coming home or walking in the room and getting caught just seems like one big jump scare, like living your life that way or doing that for a living. Like I don't usually jump too much, but I'm also not a fan of like things coming at me out of nowhere, or like having to being caught by surprise, I guess. And so just the thought of this I find extremely aversive.
I mean, it's a lot. Yeah, I don't like lying on forums that everyone else is lying on because it's just like an easy thing to do. I always feel like I'm gonna get caught. So yeah, I'm in the same boat.
I'm always curious about the stories. We watched a movie last night called Ambulance about like the person who does it out of desperation. So like robs a bank because they want to get their kid the medical treatment they need or provide for their family where it's not like a selfish driven purpose, but
Yeah.
there's something greater than them that they want to do this and they feel cornered like it's the only option for them. And I guess I probably shouldn't spoil the movie, but I mean, I don't know, you end up like rooting for the person even though they committed a crime.
Is that
Kind of
Well,
like
I mean, look at
Dexter. You remember Dexter?
Dexter?
yeah.
Yeah.
You found yourself rooting for him even though he was a major serial killer.
I was gonna say like the Walter White. I can see the same sort of thing with Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
I did as that started, but it became more and more apparent that he was just a horrible dude throughout that series. Yeah, it became
But
less noble.
but I think that's the question with a lot of this is did it start off noble and then he changed his behavior was shaped, or was it that he was always a horrible person and then this just gave him the ability to act upon that? And you can't do it because it's a fictional character and really determine. But I'd say if that was a real person, you'd kind of think, no, contingencies were shaped to survive in that world. You had to become more cutthroat, and now
Yeah,
the the reinforcing nature of behaving in a way within that culture that is more acceptable or almost necessary to survive creates a monster rather than you were always that person. Um, this is
I
almost
had to look it up. Denzel Washington was in a movie called John Q. That's what I was
Yeah.
thinking of, where he holds
That's a
up the
good one.
hospital, yeah, for his son's heart transplant.
yeah.
That's a good one. It's older. I don't remember when it was. Was that late 90s or early
I
2000s?
think it was like 2001, and I only know that because I had to look it up. It's like, what's the movie where
Yeah.
2002? Yeah,
So
yeah,
there's one thing like with Walter White that you had questioned, Kyle, and I believe that Walter White changed as opposed to always was, because there's one line when he's in the bedroom with Skylar and he says, "I am the what is it? I am the danger. I am the monster." Something like that. I am the danger.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
something that I don't think he had in him in the beginning.
Because
At least the
self
storyline
awareness.
didn't convey that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah. I need to
Like,
watch that show again because I wanted it to be a thing where like halfway through I was like, does he even still have cancer? Like, what's going on?
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, he's just getting people killed
I
essentially.
don't want to derail, Steve. I know you want to get back to it, but the very first time I watched Breaking Bad, it was when it was live, and it was the
Yeah.
episode when there was the fly buzzing around in the lab. And I
Oh
said,
yeah.
this is a horrible show. That was like my introduction to Breaking Bad. And then years later, I gave it another shot. I was like, oh, this is like the
Yeah.
best
Yeah.
show ever to be on TV.
I watched everything. I was gonna say also the fact that I don't think in either that case or John Q that we actually have to worry about the fact that we're giving away the ending. If you haven't watched it by now, that's on you, not on
It's
us.
on you. It's on you at this point. Yeah.
But
100%.
I think also what makes this so crazy as we're telling the story is it was real, and so you can't just kind of analyze and make up an excuse for a person or make up an analysis. Like we can try to analyze what this person was actually doing, but he's been dead for a couple of decades now. And so all we can do is look back and see, obviously, it was not aversive to be in a home where you could be caught at any time. Uh, he was actually, it happened a couple times. He seemed to actually kind of enjoy or relish those situations. And once they happen once or twice. And so it's really comes down to those competing contingencies of, the outcome, the fact that the probability of punishment seemingly was low because he never did serious time until much later. And the size of the reinforcement outweighed that size of punishment, at least in his eyes at that
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah.
Now he changed
I
his
was gonna
mind on that
say,
later on. There's a little foreshadowing there, but
okay. Yeah, the longer you go though, avoiding those punishing consequences, though. It's going to be less aversive.
So he started off smaller crimes, taking people, got arrested a couple times. There was a time where he actually went with a friend to like a dance. His friend was being not very gentlemanly like to some of the ladies who were there with other men. There's an altercation. Someone was actually shot and killed, and he was arrested. Was supposed to he was charged with the murder because they couldn't figure out who his friend was, and nobody could tell who the shooter was. He ended up being found guilty of assault because they couldn't prove that he was the one who had actually done it, or that it was a planned shooting. And then I can't remember the details, but he actually escaped right like 3 months before he was going to be released anyways, and like just went out and did his own thing at that point, which was interesting.
Attaboy.
But like throughout his
Arthur Berry.
incarcerations, yeah, throughout his incarcerations, he kind of hints at the fact that he was talking to the other people that were in there for theft and the career criminals, and getting an education and learning. And so
This is crazy. Okay, first of all, there's no movie about this. I looked it up.
there were very loosely made movies about this back then. You know what I mean? Like 1930s, 1940s.
But like you can point to like 3-4 at least movies that I would say easily could be pulled from this story, like the going to jail and get it was the movie Blow. I went in with a bachelor's of marijuana and graduated with a doctorate of heroin or something like cocaine. I don't know, but like
yeah,
that pulled from it. You've got Thomas Crown Affair on that. You've got there's another movie. I think it's a female. Oh, it might have been one of the Batman movies where she's a cat burglar and she was stealing from Bruce Wayne.
Was it?
And Thomas Crown Affair. Like, there's so many movies that like pull pieces from this real story. I wonder how much we're actually influenced as opposed to just fictionally created.
I think probably not much, because there was one book written by a journalist in the 1960s with the help of Arthur Berry. And then there was newspaper clippings. And other than that, this author went and looked through archives of famous people and the police departments and did the research that others had not done. And so this story was sensationalized at the time, but very little actual substantiated information was out there prior to this book that just came out recently. So it'd be cool if they did a movie now.
Is there that much similarity? Like you mentioned Lupin, Thomas Crown Affair, Ocean's 11.
Just wait to see how crazy this gets, because it gets more and more unbelievable. So he comes out of all this on the other side, and he starts breaking into mansions and stealing the jewels. At first, he's going through like the society pages, looking at the who's who and who's got pictures in the newspaper with their jewels on, because we're talking roaring 20s. We're talking back in the Great Gatsby days, where like you were out there to be seen. And we're talking about the who's who of socialites. I mean, at one point, he's robbed oil tycoons, financiers, heirs of prominent family like the Rockefellers, the Mountbattens, who are like the heiress to the Guinness fortune, a member of British royal family, famous polo player at the time. And his biggest heist, according to the author, was the heirs of the Woolworth fortune had a $700,000 pearl necklace stolen from her hotel room that would have been worth over $10 million today. And so, like, he's in the society papers. He's looking at who these people are, going to the homes, breaking in to scope it out, try to find stuff, and that way he can come back later. And I can't remember the reference, but there was an old story at the time, or a play, I think, that referenced a second story man. And the idea is you used a ladder, broken the second floor, so you weren't seen by the staff on the first floor. Because these, again, are mansions; they're all staffed. It's not just the residents that live there. And he would either find a ladder on the property or at a neighboring property and use it to go in through the second floor windows, take the things after he'd already scoped it out, and then come back and then leave. He would almost always do it, at least early on, while they were home, because he didn't want anybody to be out wearing their best jewelry and not have it there to steal. And so he'd time it
Damn.
out at dinner. At one point, he was referred to as like the dinner robber, the dinner thief. It's because you have the staff down there serving dinner, the people are down there eating, and he can be upstairs with like 20, 30 minutes to just like go around, find the good stuff, and get out.
I think you couldn't get away with this these days,
No way.
like you
No,
could
no. And
then.
the more we get into it, especially with social media, because it
Yeah,
does just keep getting more and more intense. And he gets more and more brazen, and he gets away with it. Seemingly could have gotten away with it forever if it wasn't for like a couple bad decisions.
man.
So then he started going, and again, this is during Prohibition. He started going to the nightlife places, the speakeasies where the rich and famous went, where because everybody in New York City was still partying and drinking, and like it was kind of like with marijuana here in Michigan, where it's become decriminalized in the city at some point, and so people aren't really being arrested. Everybody knows, this is hush hush. The people are paid off, so they can keep going. Um, and he's going around finding women wearing the biggest jewels, the most expensive jewels, because he became an expert on jewelry as well. He could tell what the real pearls were versus the fake ones, what gems are worth more, and were big enough to be recut so they couldn't be identified and that sort of thing. He would follow them so he could see the license plate of the limousine they were leaving in, and then he'd go to a phone, like a pay phone, call up central dispatch and say, this is patrolman so and so, there's been a car accident, I need you to look up this license plate for me. And back in the 1920s, they had the ability to look it up, but they had no system to actually see if this actually occurred. There was no checking in to see if there was actually an accident. Just someone answered, oh, yep, this is who it is. And then he would find the house that way to go rob it later. So as part of this, he is going to these places where the famous people hung out. He's fencing the diamonds or the jewels, so he has enough money to hobnob with them, and he's actually becoming kind of part of their society. Obviously, somewhat lesser known. He's not trying to become famous because then it'll be harder for him to do what he's doing. But I think at one point it was a gambling den that he opened up. That was also kind of like a underground speakeasy type place. But he also was out there having fun and trying to live this lifestyle. And so he would gamble away or drink away or party away all his money after each robbery and then have to go do another one a few weeks or months later. So
What a life, man.
he's hobnobbing around and starts hearing about parties. And he's thinking, you know what? There's not a better way to scope out a house than to show up at one of their parties.
Yep.
And so he would go get a tux on, jump a wall, walk in and act like he'd been there already. So he didn't have to go through like checking in, giving his name, whatever, and just be hanging out, walking around with these people. And they got to know, like recognize him. And so he was going by the name, I'm trying to see, I have it in the notes here. Let's see, Dr. Arthur Gibson. Now, everybody knew he wasn't a doctor, but nobody really knew what he did. But this was also like peak Prohibition. So I think there was that idea that maybe he was involved in something that way. And
Hmm.
so people would just know him and not question why he was at some of these parties. And he was talking to them, interacting with them. And then when nobody's looking, sneaking upstairs to scope out the bedrooms and figure out where people were keeping their jewelry. The craziest story from this maybe was at one of these parties that he had snuck into uninvited. He's been talking to everybody, hanging out. Everybody knows he's there. He's not hiding in the shadows. And the crown prince of England at the time, it was Prince Edward, who was famous later for abdicating the throne because he wanted to marry a divorced woman from the United States. And at the time, this is like before any of this happened, he was the world's most eligible bachelor because he was looking for his wife to become queen one day of England. He's at this party, hanging out, and Dr. Arthur Gibson says, "Hey, this is kind of boring. Should we go check out the New York nightlife?" And of course, some of the others are like, "Oh no, we couldn't possibly," and like, "Oh, that'd be too dangerous for the prince to. He's too well known." But because all the bars and party areas were underground, like an hour or two later, the prince comes back to him. He's like, "So were you serious? Can we go do that?" And so he went out partying, taking the next in line for the British throne, partying and down to like in New York City, drinking illegally while he was at a house to case it for his jewelry, and then came back in like a day or two later and robbed the place.
Pretty incredible.
It
Yeah.
really is.
And so he's known in the social scenes. He's noticing that he is finding good jewels. He's making more money. He's honing the craft, and he's really becoming kind of proud of the artist of a theft he is becoming. You know what I mean? But he's noticing he's not getting all of the best stuff, or he's missing things when he goes in. And he decides, if I wake the people up, go in the middle of the night, wake them up and make them hand it to me, I won't miss all this good stuff. And so he becomes even more brazen. He'll go in at night, either tie up or lock the door so they can't run away and get for help. You know, again, 1920s, there's not a phone in every room, obviously no internet or cell phones. And he'd wake them up with the gun and say, hey, sorry to bother you. You know, I hate to do this to you, but I need you to find your jewelry. Again, he's recognizable. So he's actually using shadows and lighting to prevent them from being able to see his face clearly enough. And he was never recognized by doing this.
That a boy.
And this is where he got to be known as the gentleman thief, was because he was so accommodating, so nice, apologizing for what he's doing, lighting cigarettes for the women or the men while they're tied up or sitting there kind of stuck in the situation. In a couple of situations, he actually gave some of the jewels back, or one time it was like an heirloom or something that he felt bad for and like mailed it back to them. And this is where he really became known as this gentleman thief. And it'd be like, really was already newsworthy that these rich people were being robbed during, you know, dinner time, and he was the dinner time thief. But now, no, this suave, nicely dressed, polite man is, you know, lighting my cigarette as he robs me of all my jewels.
And that's a movie right there.
Yeah.
That would be a
So
great movie.
about halfway through his escapades, he meets a woman. Shortly after they meet, her husband dies. The husband was a taxi entrepreneur, and the wife was actually involved in politics. When they first met, she was like a Democratic planner and kind of setting up events and different things for the Democrats throughout New York City, and then seemingly was on the fast track to become a politician herself. They meet, they start spending time together. Her husband dies, they fall in love, get married. But again, she's married to is it Dr. Gibson, not to, you know,
Nice.
Barry. And she says she knows he's not a doctor. She knows he goes away for business here and there for a night here, a night there, but doesn't know what he does, and just always kind of assumed, like said before, that he was involved in like bootlegging or something. But
It's
she
a
was
fair
okay with
assumption.
she was
Far
okay with
off.
that level of breaking the law. You know what I mean? Because at the time, nobody actually liked prohibition. They just thought, it's this thing we have to deal with, you know?
Yeah.
And so he's living this double life. He is a little bit later takes on an accomplice. So, you know, you can hold the people while I search, or I'll hold the people while you search. You break in and I'll be watch. I'll break in, you be the watch person. Teams up with this guy, and that eventually was going to probably be his downfall. There's multiple times as he's, you know, working solo that someone would get free. He was shot at a few times. The police may have caught sight of him, just like, you know, a fleeting glance, and he was able to get away. And I think the idea was probably, hey, I can actually do this a little safer with some help, you know. But the guy he chose to work with was not opposed to violence. He was not a gentleman, and he was kind of a say he was part of the rough crowd. And I can't remember, he may even have been the person that actually shot at and killed that person during that other altercation. I can't remember for
Right.
sure or not. So according to Barry, our original thief, he decides this last big score, this is going to be it. He's in there speaking to the wife and husband, actually gives them back a couple of rings that just, she says, mean a lot to them, even though they weren't that important. lights her cigarette. They're on their way, and then his accomplice is the one who's fencing the goods, but there's some stuff that they just couldn't get rid of. And around that time, Barry starts hearing grumblings of like, oh, this is where the people are hanging out. And he's like, how'd they get that information? Because he's never told anybody. His wife doesn't even know, but that is the area of like their kind of their hangouts. And then one day he's walking to his car after the partner gave him back the goods that couldn't be fenced through their normal connection. And immediately he's pulled over and found with these items. And so he's
Oh
pretty
man.
sure it was this accomplice that gave him up. But he's been through the legal system before. He knows how to fight, deny everything, let the attorneys deal with it. He could have just received the stolen goods, not be, the robber itself. And again, I'm giving the footnote version because there were other situations where he actually worked with detectives as a go-between, but it was really for him as himself, and gave things back to avoid getting in trouble that he couldn't fence and that sort of thing. But his true downfall was he had given his wife some of the jewels. And so when she came to the jail to see him, the detective saw the jewels, threatened to arrest her, and he says, all right, I will confess to this one crime as long as you let her go.
Oh wow.
So
A gentleman
he,
through and through to the
yeah,
end.
and he says at this point that he had never even thought of the consequences. He didn't care about prison, but the thought of having to be away from his wife that he loved so much was the reason that he wished he had never gotten into this. Like, she was
Yeah.
the one thing that was reinforcing enough to compete with all these other things. And theoretically, that's probably why he at least claimed this was his last robbery, although it wasn't like a great span of time. So you can't know for sure that this was really his last robbery. Um,
Right.
so he talks to the DA. He says, I will admit to all of these crimes, but I'm only pleading guilty to this one. They agree to it. He doesn't admit to all of them. I think it's like 25 in total,
Just
millions of
25.
dollars. Yeah. I think he eventually admitted to over 40, but no, 25 of them that were taking place at that time. But he also threw his partner under the bus. Like, I didn't do any of this bad stuff, though. I didn't shoot at anybody. This was all him, because I think officer was either shot or shot at during one of their escapes. And he's like, wasn't me. So don't put that on me either.
Sure.
And so pleads guilty, gets 25 years, expects to do about half the time. And his partner ends up getting 50 years once he's eventually caught. But there's actually a war of words through the media of them yelling and accusing each other while the partner is still on the lam and he's in jail. Seemingly that would be the end of the story, right? That's enough
I
to make at
mean,
least one movie.
it's a great
At
it's a
least.
great story. Yeah.
It gets a little crazier. So he's admitted, he's apologized. He says, this was me. I'll take full responsibility. I just want to get out eventually and spend time with my wife. And so goes to one jail, and it actually goes real well. He's like working with the head gardener. They're getting along. Then once he gets sentenced, he gets sent to a really rough prison. The treatment's not good, but he's like, you know what? I'm still going to deal with this because I want to get out with my wife someday. And then he gets word that she has cancer. And he's like, what am I sitting in here for? She's not going to be around when I get out. She's getting sicker and sicker by the day. And so he plants the seed, supposedly anyways, of unrest with all the other prisoners and talks them into causing a riot. So he and 5 other prisoners can escape.
An old prison
So
riot.
yeah, there's gunshots involved. There's cars being stolen, families being taken hostage. It's a crazy time. I believe he was either shot or at least injured in some way during the escape. Finds a doctor that'll help him, and then after time, gets a hold of his wife, and she is getting somewhat better by this time. And so at first he just sees her because he thinks she's dying, but she's doing well enough. And so she starts spending every time she can get away without it being obvious that she's not spending her time in New York City to come see him in New Jersey. And over time, it's more and more and more, but also she's making sure to be enough around with her friends and socializing and doing all these things to make sure that nobody's noticing she's missing.
Mm.
After a period of time, it seems like she was probably in remission, even though they didn't use that word. She's doing quite well. He's healed up. They're spending most of their lives together at this point, and she's just going back and forth. And they decide to move to like a small farm town and kind of start over. And so they I think lived in town at one point and then ended up renting a room for a farmer and helping out. He actually buys up, they said windshield wipers, but I think it was like residential squeegees is more what they were talking about, not like for a car, but I might be wrong. And he buys up enough of these, like a
Nice.
salesman's kit, to make it seem like he's selling them to make money. And they're living life. Nobody's questioning. They're actually, neighbors are trying to get him to run for like county something or other because they think he's such a good guy and he wouldn't possibly screw them over. But he knows that like that's a death sentence. There's no way I can do that. And then all of a sudden, the Lindbergh baby fiasco happens. And so anybody that's not
Yeah.
familiar, Charles Lindbergh, solo flight, super famous, couldn't be any more of a celebrity. And someone decides to kidnap his child for ransom,
Mhm.
or maybe you know,
Yeah.
spoiler alert, the baby ends up not making it. And they believe it was probably an accidental death during the original escape during the kidnapping. But nobody knows what's going on. There's a ransom note left. Someone actually met up with this person, did the ransom note. I think it was a doctor, and did an exchange, but then the child was not returned. Was found later, but immediately the media starts going to, "Hey, this guy is known for his heists. He's out here on the lam. He's desperate. It must have been him." And
Uh,
so now all of a sudden, his face is on every newspaper again. uh the police, some like shot detectives that weren't actually involved but were trying to be a name for themselves, are out there blaming him as well. His wife is going to like the newspaper and demanding retraction, saying he would never do this, even though she's still traveling back and forth to the city. And finally someone in the small town recognizes him and calls the authorities in. Now, of course, the guy who did the money exchange says, nope, doesn't even look like him. Definitely not him. Everything's wrong. Was not Arthur at all. But at this point, he's caught. So he goes
or his
back in.
past catches up with him.
Yeah, he goes in. He actually beats the court case for escape and inciting the riot, and like 3 inmates died, and a lot of people were injured, including guards. Um, but he beats those charges, so he doesn't have any time added to his sentence. I think he was free like 3 or 4 years with his wife, getting that time together. And at which point she's healthier. She's going to stick around. He doesn't get any time added to his sentence, and he's kind of just back where he started. Except now, I think he's a little bit has some lifelong injuries from the escape and the injuries he's gotten from that. He doesn't walk quite as well, but otherwise he's good. Um, Unfortunately, during his time in prison, though, his wife, her cancer reemerges. She passes away. His parents die, and so by the time he's actually released, it's just he has a sister that takes him in, and he just lives the rest of his life quietly, except doing a little bit of news coverage here and there, a couple stories. Helped
Mm.
that book be written. Talked to some actors that they tried to base a movie loosely around his life, but didn't seemingly do that great of a job. At least it's not famous nowadays. And I think it was his niece would later say, like, he was just sweet old quiet uncle Arthur or Art, and had no idea until much, much later that he
Oh,
had lived this crazy life. He just quietly lived the rest of his life like none of this happened. So
Wow.
like the fact that this isn't a major blockbuster every 15 years is shocking to me. You know what I mean?
it does lend itself to an appealing movie for sure.
And you can imagine, there I am just trying to read this piece of fiction that I didn't look closely enough when I rented this book, or even pay attention to what I was starting to listen to. I'm like, this is true story. I had to look it up like 3 times. Nope, this is actually a real story. And from a behavior analytics like standpoint, looking at the progression of, you know, trying to make ends meet, to I'm just partying, to now, okay, I'm going to try to set up my lifestyle. And at least if he's telling the truth, do this one last big multi-million-dollar score to set up my future,
Yeah.
and then get into something else. And had he not potentially been turned in or ratted out by his accomplice, he could have almost maintained, maybe gotten into business or do some investing and live this life of luxury in the spotlight in New York City. Like none of this ever happened. Um,
That's
but
interesting. He was almost like paycheck to paycheck as a thief.
yeah, but thousands and thousands of dollars back in a time where that was crazy amounts of money.
Yeah.
Uh, it's wild too to think like I don't know if he really could have stopped because it had become such an
Mm.
art, escaping, getting away with it, becoming more and more brazen, waking people up, being face to face with them when he is somewhat in the spotlight. Like, he wasn't in newspapers, his face, but he was, rubbing elbows with all these very famous people. Uh, and yet they're not recognizing him. It almost seems like it could have gotten, and I don't want to say addicting because we talked about a few episodes ago how addiction isn't necessarily how society talks about addiction, but so reinforcing that you want to keep doing it even though you don't need to anymore. Like I don't think the loot, so to say, was the reinforcer for most of this. I think partially
Mm.
lifestyle and partially he saw it as an art and he was an artist and he was out here doing something that nobody else could do or get away with in a way that he saw to be it gave him dignity and respect that he wouldn't have had any other way in his life probably.
Yeah, it's almost because he had something that was working and he had to do more. It's almost like um needing like more stimulation in order to like is fulfill the word fulfill the reinforcement like
I mean, again, go throughout the definition real quick just for everybody. I know we do this a lot, but anything that follows behavior that increases the future frequency. And so as long as you can call it fulfillment, you can call it what you want, but without adding the verbalization or that label to it, really what we're getting down to is the fact that that outcome, even without the money, probably would have been enough to maintain that behavior. And so from a societal standpoint, you could probably say like fulfillment from those actions itself. But it wasn't until there was that competing contingency of having that partnership and love with his wife that he was potentially putting at risk and eventually did put at risk and lose. And that was his greatest regret. It wasn't the thefts, it wasn't the loss of his freedom. It was just the loss of that and how those compete with one another.
yeah, he didn't really even care about freedom. He cared more about, the potential of losing her because he didn't know, he'd heard news, but he didn't know for sure just how severe. Um,
Yeah.
like he wasn't he flipped and just said, "Yep, I'll admit to this, but you can't involve her." Like,
Yeah. And I think he had when she was sick, he did have information that she was that sick. And he was willing to give up the rest of his life in prison to have that more time with her and be there with her while she was ill is what how the picture is painted anyways in the book. And so um y-
I feel like the fear of prison would be enough for me.
yeah, we won't get into too many details, but I will say that being in a confined space against my will, I can't handle it. It's not for me. And so we'll just say that that has guided my path later or after my teen years quite well.
It's a good MO.
um, so I know we're a little bit light on analysis, more heavy into the storytelling in this one. But do you think
Biography. It's
do you,
good.
do you think we did enough science here to at least call it an episode? We're doing well enough with that, or at least be entertaining enough that no one cares.
I like it. I'd never heard of this guy. I the way that it ties into like a lot of even modern storytelling, like Breaking Bad, is really interesting to me. Like that somebody actually lived a life that really entailed these details is really interesting to me. And I looked up a picture of him. He's just like straight, like mobster looking, but not really. Like kind of straight laced, but also really cool.
It was the 20s, everybody wore a suit
Yeah,
back then.
I
Yeah.
know. It's wild. And no flip flops.
Nope. I got a why for you. You might be able to not over a long period of time deep dive this. So why do we romanticize like stories like this. Like the fact that we as a society, I made while we were going through this, I made a list of movies that I'm going to go back and watch because they're in my mind have some sort of like connection, whether they actually do or not. That's a wholly different thing. But
Yeah, I think that's like probably a full episode sometime. It's actually on the list as something to do, but it's not an easy analysis because I don't know that you can have the same answer for everybody individually. But as a group, I think there's kind of living vicariously. It sounds exciting. It sounds like he early on got into this life because it was exciting and his friends were doing it and he was trying to be cool like them. I remember some of the early things that I was doing that could have gotten me in trouble wasn't necessarily because I was trying to impress anybody, but the lifestyle was exciting. I was putting myself in situations where I didn't need to be. I was not, you know, struggling to feed myself, yet I'm getting involved in things that are potentially illegal just because the excitement factor, the fun factor, maybe a little bit of like a respect factor as well. And
Mm.
uh even if we're not doing it ourselves, I think we can all feel a little bit of how that would be if we were the bad guy instead of the good guy in our own life story. You know, if we took that line, there is a level of excitement and it almost kind of seems fun. And especially if it's a likable bad guy that you can root for, that's even more so. Like I like everything about this guy. If he just wasn't doing that one illegal thing, we could be friends. But it's still pretty cool. I kind of like him anyways because he's a likable character, and this guy really was a likable character. Seemingly, even the people he was robbing had nothing but nice things to say about him, except for the fact that he robbed them. You know,
I wonder how different his life would have been if he never met those older kids.
It's always the older kids, man.
I think even back then, more so than now, and even now, like we can get into this sometime about how hard it is to get out of, you know, mediocre or even tough situations. You know what I mean? Privilege isn't necessarily coming from a wealthy family. Privilege just might be that you have the ability to dig yourself out of a generational hole that others did not. And so being from an immigrant family that, you know, the Irish tended to be looked down upon quite a bit back in those times. Um, and uh, not coming from the means to go to like a prestigious university or that sort of thing, it's likely that he lived a better life, even though it was for a short period of time, doing this than he could have ever hoped to reach by doing the right things, you know? And that's part of it too. Back then, much easier to get away with this sort of thing. Now you can just be on Facebook like, hey, that guy that just robbed me looks awful lot like Joe down the street here on like whose friend request or who's like someone you might know just popped up. You know what I mean? Not not even to mention cameras being everywhere. They did have fingerprints, I think, fingerprinting back then,
Yeah.
but uh the technology, like you had a much better chance. If you had to weigh the pros and cons and the ability to get away with it, he did almost get caught several times. He got shot at a few times, but the probability of getting caught, the probability of punishment did not reach high enough to combat the probability of reinforcement. And so uh I think that's a big part of it as well.
That adds up.
I'm going to give you guys my movie list that was inspired by this
All
episode.
right. Should we
So
judge
I've
your
got
list?
Thomas Crown Affair at the top. Just
Yeah.
a phenomenal rewatch. Catch Me If You Can, DeLeo.
That's one
Ocean's
we should do
11.
because that was a true story. So we should
Catch
actually
Me If
talk
You
about the
Can.
real story, not the Hollywood version.
Yeah, that was. I only dug a little bit into Catch Me If You Can after learning that it was true. Ocean's 11. I think that the not hurting people part that plays into it, but it reminded me of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
One I've never seen, The Talented Mr. Ripley. I heard that that was pretty good.
Yeah.
I don't
Has been
remember the
years.
details. I know
And
I've seen it, but I
then
do, and I liked it. I just don't remember the details of it.
and then I've got three more. Inside Man, phenomenal movie. Watched it a bunch of times, and it's got Denzel. Now
That's
You
right.
See Me,
Is that the magician one?
The Four Horsemen. Yeah,
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
one I didn't expect to like, and it was better than I thought it was going to be just by looking at the commercials.
and then the last one you mentioned, Lupin.
Lupin, yeah, that's the show. It's like a series, limited series, not a movie, but it has that type of feel where like
Yeah.
you're not even keeping up with what the thief is doing. And that's kind of what's fun with these old mystery books too, is again, it's not real life. And so in real life, you can find patterns and actually make an educated guess before you get to the end. And these ones, these old time mystery writers are just saying, oh, here's something you never even considered because we didn't give you enough information. And then there you go. And it's kind of fun with those. And so that's why I'm still hoping to go back and find the Lupin books on audio, because I don't have time to sit there and read it while driving and that sort of thing. I can listen, but it is, that show is very much that same type of feel of like, what's coming next? Can you figure out the mystery before they give you the answer, sort of thing?
Mm.
Well, Kyle, you should make sure you tag Netflix and ask them for 3%, since we have this idea of making this story into
Done.
It's like, we'll write you the script and just hand them the book that's already been written. There you go.
and nobody else knows.
I bet if they found enough information, I mean, the author was even looking up like I think British Family Archives to get information because they were robbed and involved in some of these things. You know what I mean? It is interesting.
wild.
So
Yeah, the story probably comes together just scattered across a whole bunch of different incidents.
yeah, and
Incident.
Incident.
I think we'll go with Incidai. Yeah, I've never heard that before, but I like it.
It's a thing now.
Yeah, I do think the author probably admits that, not that he took liberties, but he connected some dots that you can't find 100% information on. But again, this is a professor. I think we can give at least some benefit of the doubt that he was positive enough with those connections that he made, that he's willing to put it out there and put his name on it, because those of us that have done research or are doing research know, like, if you found to have put something out there that's not true, that's your career, like right there. So
the repercussions are huge. You know, the 20s, the documentation of life was nowhere near what it is now.
Yeah, the cool thing though is, even now, if you just Google Arthur Berry thief, it will pop up with like actual newspaper clippings from the 1920s and 1930s talking
That's
about
cool.
him. So
Wow. Nice.
all right. Everyone let us know if you enjoy this sort of thing, or if it's like, nope, you're science people, start talking more science, you jerks. But it was a fun change of pace, and unless someone tells us, and I say someone, some groups of someone's tells us to stop doing it, we'll probably do this just for to change things up periodically. So any other
I enjoy
thoughts?
It's fun.
Any other movies to throw out? Anything? No?
No, I made a list.
I am going to recommend The Score, though. It's not fully related, but it's a phenomenal movie about safe cracking. So I really liked it.
Yeah, there's a lot that I'm not even going to try to remember at the moment. There was it? I can't even remember the name of it. I'm just going to stop now. We're going to give up.
Okay.
I will be another 20-minute conversation of me. It wasn't this one, it was this one. Oh, was this? We're not going to do it. So, all right then. Well, if we're all done here, thanks for listening. If you made it this far, at least, if you didn't get sick of my or our voices and turn us off well before now, remember, if you're trudging through the snow or out there robbing mansions, to try to enjoy the small things in life. Don't just spend it all on gambling, but look for that love interest that you can actually find some real warmth and joy in. And just watch out who those accomplices are, because you never know when you might turn the next corner and you have a gun in your back, or an officer climbing into your car and arresting you. So be careful out there and enjoy.
Watch your accomplices.